Hey, wrestling fans, we're back at it again for another wrestling podcast powered by the United States Marines. Teddy Bristol with Braden Suprenant here, and we're at Canyon Crest High School where they're doing a quad meet. There's tons of teams here: Oceanside, Kearney, Saints, Canyon Crest, and even Torrey Pines. So we'll get into that in a second, but let's talk about what happened. Excuse me, I'm still a little sick. Let's talk about what happened over the weekend. Poway won TOC up in Reno. Teddy, how big of an accomplishment is that?
That is a very big accomplishment for their program. Reno TOC is a tournament where teams from all over the country come. They bring all their A guys. Very tough tournament, and it says a lot about Poway coming from the San Diego section. Going to that tournament, it's a ways away from them. They got to travel to get up there, acclimate to the atmosphere up there, and it also says a lot about the program and their depth, because that's a very tough tournament. So great accomplishment for them.
That's a big win for Poway High School and for San Diego County Wrestling. Just name a couple of guys. Searle came in third at the 113 for Poway. Zolman finished first for 132. He is killing it. The Wyoming commit for Poway as well. Tolentino came in second at 145. And Mata came in third for 152. Just talk a little bit about Poway's top finishers. The other big tournament this weekend was the El Cajon Invitational down south, and Rancho Bernardo was able to come in second. They came behind Sultana, but Sultana's a pretty good program.
Yes, Sultana is up in the southern section. Very tough program. They send state-level wrestlers out pretty much every year. I used to compete against them when I was at Temecula, and I'm familiar with the program and the coaching staff there. They always put out some tough wrestlers, so still a great accomplishment for Rancho Bernardo coming in second at a tough tournament that's growing, the El Cajon Invitational. You said about 40, 50 teams there, Braden?
Yeah, it was about 40 teams.
Yeah, that's a good-sized tournament, so that's a very good accomplishment coming in second place.
They were able to get 5 kids to win their weight classes, and Jaden Lee, Jaden Abbas, Chaz Franchina, as well as Eric Salcedo and Christian Blair all won their weight classes. A couple other San Diego kids won their weight classes as well. Bernie Truex up at Rancho Buena Vista. He is killing it this year. He won his weight class of 138 for Rancho Buena Vista. And then Mater Dei had another kid, Aaron Olmeg, to win his weight class of 160 for Mater Dei. So that's a little bit over the weekend. A couple other teams that placed. Rancho Buena Vista came in 5th at that tournament. Vista came in 7th. Eastlake was 9th. Mater Dei came in 13th. And Steel Canyon came in 14th. So pretty good showing from San Diego teams this weekend.
Yeah, at the El Cajon tournament, it seems like definitely had a good showing for San Diego. Rancho Bernardo taking second, and then Mater Dei having a champion. Rancho Buena Vista had a champion. So, we're seeing a mix of some good high schools showing their best wrestlers.
So let's get into our top 10, and it's a little bit pretty much the same as last week, except for a little bit of a shuffle in the middle. Poway's still number 1, Rancho Bernardo's still number 2, San Marcos still number 3, but then where we get the change is now Rancho Buena Vista moves up to 4, Brawley and Mount Carmel move down to 5 and 6, Vista, LCC, Ramona, and Eastlake round out the top 10. So that's our top 10. Excuse me once again. But let's get into a couple kids that we want to talk about, and they're not only are they ranked high in the San Diego section, but they're also ranked very high in state. And one of those kids is Chase Zolman of Poway. He's ranked 2nd in the state in 134, number 1 in the county. And we know Chase, so what can you talk about how good of a wrestler Zolman is?
Well, Zolman is a very, very talented wrestler. He always is going to these top-level tournaments. Just coming off a win at the Reno TOC, that's a great victory for him. Great accomplishment. Like I said earlier, that's a tournament where teams from all over the country come. It's a really good test of your skills and abilities at that tournament. Chase also wrestles year-round. I know he does the freestyle and Greco wrestling, which is different from the high school style that we wrestle in California, collegiate or folk style. So Chase, has always been putting in the work. He also does strength training with Jeff. So, he's not just doing things on the mat, he's doing things off the mat too to put into his wrestling. So it's a huge accomplishment coming off that victory at Reno TLC, and expect big things from him this year at the state tournament.
What about Abbas of Rancho Bernardo? He's another one of those kids that you were talking about, the Greco and freestyle. So give us a little bit more about what Greco and freestyle is, and talk a little bit about how much of a badass, if you will, Abbas is.
Well, I have seen Jaden Abbas wrestle in it was the Cadet World Championships. Excuse me. It was the Cadet National Championships. So this was a couple years ago in Akron, Ohio. These are where the best cadets in the country. Cadets are around the age of 13 to 14. Usually freshmen or sophomores in high school. And he ended up placing at that tournament. And he also is another wrestler that does year-round wrestling. When I say freestyle and Greco, those two styles are what is wrestled in the Olympics. That is not the same style that is wrestled for high school in North America. So we wrestle a style, folk style, which has a different set of rules. Freestyle and Greco both. To give you a general kind of understanding, points are scored differently. And one of the main differences in folk style, you have to get back points, you have to hold the wrestler on their back, and you can only lock your hands in folk style when you're on top if you're in a pinning combination. Or if, other than that, you have to have a wrist, or you're not allowed to lock around the body when you're in control. In freestyle, to score back points, freestyle and Greco, to score back points, it just has to be a quick exposure. And then you can score 2 back points. There's also high amplitude scoring where you can score 4 or 5 points in freestyle and Greco for throws. Feet to back takedowns also score 4 points. So the scoring's a little different. And also one thing just in general about freestyle and Greco and high school wrestling, the schools that are able to push their wrestlers to do the freestyle and Greco, it just makes you a more well-rounded wrestler. So, there are some programs that push their wrestlers to do freestyle and Greco. Some quite aren't there yet and only do the folk style wrestling, which is also great. But that's a little background on freestyle and Greco.
I was going to ask you, how important is it to, you kind of answered my question already, but how important, what is it to do kind of all 3 types of styles? Is it that much more important to do it, or wrestlers all right not doing a little bit of everything?
You can still have successful wrestlers in our country that wrestle only folk style. That's absolutely true. But if you want to be more well-rounded, like I said, getting out there and doing some freestyle and Greco teaches you certain things. I can definitely say that you can teach a folk style wrestler how to ride and do those types of things. You can also teach that to a freestyle wrestler. But folk style has some tendencies when it comes to riding that just puts a different dynamic on a wrestling match. When you're scoring quick points in freestyle and you only have a certain amount of time to turn them on top or bottom, it just kind of forces you to pick up your pace and your urgency and your, your attack style in freestyle and Greco. I'd say that's a big difference, if that makes sense. But it's definitely going to add to your wrestling if you do freestyle and Greco. It makes you more well-rounded. You learn more throws and high-amplitude things, which are very useful in folk style. Some folk style coaches that only teach that might not know some of those throws and some of those higher amplitude moves. So it's definitely going to make you a better wrestler, hands down.
So you said not all schools are able to offer the Greco and the freestyle. For all those wrestlers listening at home, how can they go about learning Greco or freestyle or pushing themselves to be a little bit better than maybe what their school can offer?
Well, you definitely got to look. Depending on what area you're in, there might be schools out there that have feeder programs where you can wrestle for them and get in some mat time over the summer, and then you got to wrestle for your high school. And I don't want to step on anybody's toes by saying that, but, there's definitely schools that have the feeder programs or wrestling club, if you will. And a lot of times those are run by high school coaches. And it all just depends on kind of the culture of the wrestling club. Some wrestling clubs their wrestlers will go to different high schools. Some wrestling clubs, all their wrestlers that are in that wrestling club will go to a certain high school. So it kind of just depends on what area you're in. But wrestling coaches, you know, a lot of them, most of them like to hold on to any wrestlers they can and grow you no matter where you're from because they love the sport. So, you know, hopefully you can find a coach out there that's willing to take you under and show you some freestyle and Greco and help you grow your wrestling.
All right, Teddy, let's change gears here and let's talk a little bit about what's going on behind us right now. We got a quad duel. That's what it's called. It's called the quad duel, but there's 5 schools here, all getting mat time and doing wrestling and whatnot. So describe for us what exactly is going on right behind us, how the format works, and what teams are trying to accomplish out of a meet like this, not necessarily a tournament.
Gotcha. So right now there's a match going on within a dual meet. So you have Canyon Crest Academy. They're wrestling Oceanside. This is a mandatory cross duel. So the cross duel is when a team is wrestling another team that's out of their league. And it's the mandatory one, so it's required by CIF that Oceanside and Canyon Crest wrestle each other. So a dual meet is when, like I said, a team will be wrestling another team. They have their whole lineup that they'll put out, hopefully 14 guys. That would be a full lineup. And you have those 14 guys wrestle each other. Depending on how each wrestler does in each weight, will determine how many points they score for their team. At the end of the duel, they have a final score. If they have more points than the other team, then they win the duel. And like I said, points are scored differently on how you win. So if you pin in a dual meet, you're going to score 6 points. And then there's tech, major decision, and decision, where you'll be scoring 3 points for your team if you win it by decision, which is 1 to 7 points victory. So I could win 8-3. That's a decision, scoring 3 points for my team.
You're trying to win your match, but you're also trying to get points to your team so your team can win at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Not only is it individual, one-on-one, it's also a team sport. And there's no other sport like this where you could do essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Individual and team. So we're fired up about this meet. We're going to go check out a little bit more of what's going on. And then we'll bring back some wrestlers and some coaches maybe later and catch up with them. But for Teddy Bristol, I'm Braden Suprenant for another edition of the Wrestling Podcast powered by the United States Marines. We'll see you guys next week.